thanks to Dan for the intro, and thanks for all of you for coming and inviting me and whatever. So yeah, this is actually much more pragmatic than you might expect from me. This is very kind of detailed stuff of like, how do you get the glass-to-glass latency of a video stream as low as you can? And it turns out that it's just a series of trimming at each layer. So I'm Tim Panton, I'm the CTO at Pipe. I wrote 10 years ago, it turns out, a WebRTC stack for small devices, and it's sort of still doing things. It's still in baby monitors, but it's also going around racetracks at 250 kph, which is kind of fun. I write open source. There's a bunch of protocol implementations, and also something else. I'm not quite sure what you call it, but an interface for v4L2, all in pure Java, because, well, memory safety, basically. So this is a race car camera. So this camera sits over the driver's shoulder, and it sends live video and audio to the pit crew in high quality, at low latency, over a long range. I say long range, but like 5 kilometers typically are these tracks in diameter. And at high speeds, not only like reasonable bit rates, but also the cars are moving quite fast. And we use public 5G networks for this. And it's not broadcast, right? The end consumer of this is the pit crew and the team sponsors. It's not the wider audience. So it's not broadcast. And this is what it looks like and sounds like. V8s are astonishingly noisy if you take the silencers off. But yeah, it's kind of gets you going a bit. The other thing we're doing is, with the same technology, we're investigating putting these cameras into autonomous vehicles. With some funding from the EU, we're doing this investigation. Initially, we've done some technical tests to see whether it makes sense, whether it works, and now we're looking at the regulatory aspects of like whether there's a legislative and a practical requirement for this. And basically the idea is it allows a remote human to supervise and see what the autonomous vehicle is doing. And one time in 1,000, maybe intervene and tell it that, yes, it is allowed to go around that tree that's fallen in the road or, you know, whatever. And probably as a hint, rather than actually driving it, the remote operator is probably not going to have a steering wheel in their hand. They're probably going to just like OK a menu of options that the autonomous vehicle provides them with. And our camera works pretty well for this. This is a test we did at the former Tegel Airport, where you can run autonomous vehicles without like much difficulty. There's no safety, well, there's safety issues, but they're much constrained. So what protocol could we use for doing that? I mean, it's just slightly cheating asking this question, but I'll ask it anyway. So I asked ChatGPT, actually, and ChatGPT produced this list, which you're all probably pretty familiar with. They're all protocols. It was interesting to see that RTSP is still on that list, which I think is probably the oldest one there. But anyway, so it gave me this list. And basically what that means is you have to make a decision about what latency is acceptable. So what does latency mean in the context of a race car? And the answer is that 10 seconds, which is a kind of median of those protocols, is a heck of a long way on a racetrack, right? You start talking about the corner you're approaching, and he's actually there. It doesn't make any sense anymore. So it matters. The 10-second thing isn't going to work in this context. So what is the goal? Like, how do you know what number is enough? So there are a couple of metrics, and one of them is that actually you can hear the gear changer on a V8 from at least 100 meters away. So we reckon that in order for that to be kind of roughly right, you want the speed of sound. You've got the time of the speed of sound of it actually arriving and it arriving over your laptop, and you want them roughly in sync. And so that gives you 290 milliseconds based on the speed of sound in warm air. So that's like, gives you one metric. The other one for the autonomous vehicles is that It turns out that the American drink drive limit for blood alcohol is roughly equivalent to 200 milliseconds of cognitive impairment. So that gives you a measure for like how long you can wait before you make your mind up. So we reckon that aiming for under 200 milliseconds was a safe bet. That is the low end of what WebRTC can do, and as far as ChatGPT is concerned, sorry Ali, I know this is disagreed with, but ChatGPT tells me that no other protocol will do that, including mock. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be told I'm wrong about that, but anyway. So, or ChatGPT's wrong, it's not me. And I do love having an AI to blame for my mistakes and for justifying my decisions. It's really nice. So this is a typical pipe device. It's a Linux box. I don't do these little devices yet. Dan is braver than me in that context. Sits there, it runs as an agent. And typically we have an H.264 feed and maybe a microphone and some data and whatever. And we run it over a peer-to-peer connection with data channel. And over the data channel, we can carry things like LiDAR and PTZ commands and setting the hue, saturation, and brightness and stuff like that. So there's more data that goes over the data channel. It's useful to have that data channel around, which some of the other protocols don't support, like RTSP doesn't support a side channel for data. So how do I measure latency, right? Well, the easy way, which is basically very easy to do, you go to a website, and this is clock.zone, and you put this clock on the screen, and then you point the video camera at the screen, and then you put the video output displayed next to it, and you do a screenshot. And you inspect them, and you do the subtraction in your head, and you come out with, in this case, 350 milliseconds. The problem is that it's not truly glass to glass. It's not from that lens to this screen, because it's never left this screen. Like the screen cap is before it's left the glass. And what's worse, that screen cap could be in some way synchronized to the rendering engine, because it's on the same hardware and it's probably done in the same GPU or whatever. So you've got some correlation risks there. And it's a pain in the neck to do each time. You have to kind of do it manually. So we ended up building this thing, which is essentially it's doing the same thing. You point your camera at a light source in this case, and what we're really simulating is like the brake lights of the car in front, right? The brake light comes on, and how long does it take from that light coming on to the remote supervisor seeing that on their screen? That's the measure you're looking at. And so basically what happens is that we flash the light in front of the camera, and then we render that camera onto a screen over the appropriate video link, and then we put a light sensor on it. And the light sensor and the flash are connected on the same, in this case, BeagleBone, small processor, and it can measure the time difference between the two. And that actually, I know there's an open source thing on GitHub with the software for that and a description of the hardware for it. But it can give you a reasonably accurate measurement down to certainly 5 to 10 millisecond accuracy for what the latency of a call is. So, yeah, so having got a way of measuring it, I've now got to get down from 350 to sub 200. And that's basically a matter of working through each of the layers and taking stuff out. So the big one, the big saving, was 40 milliseconds in getting rid of GStreamer. Now, I love GStreamer. It's a great thing to use, and like it's the first starting point in all of the projects to put a GStreamer pipeline together and do something. Problem is, it's a pipeline. So intrinsically, it has several frames in the pipeline. And the thing with pipelines is nothing comes out until you've filled it. And so you end up with a couple of frames worth of latency in a typical GStreamer pipeline. And however hard you do it, you still end up with some latency. So what we ended up doing is talking direct to the encoder and talking directly to the camera. And in this particular hardware, that's not too difficult. I put it off for a very long time because I didn't want to do it in JNI, but I still wanted to use Java. And Java 24 has this really sweet, well, 23 technically, has this really sweet thing which is foreign functions and memory, which is a replacement for JNI. They deny it. They say it's nothing to do with JNI, but it's effectively a replacement for JNI, which allows you to do memory-safe access to foreign DLLs or foreign .SOs, which is actually really sweet. So basically, we can mmap video buffers into Java's memory, tell Java that that's what it is, and Java will treat it safely. And we can get callbacks from v4l2, which says when they've been updated, and we can treat them, which I like, not as much as I liked reading from dev video. Like, I'm a Plan 9 guy, really, at heart, and reading from dev video was a much cleaner way of doing it, but nobody supports that anymore. So that was 40 milliseconds, which is nice. Weirdly, moving to IPv6 from IPv4 will give you around 10 millisecond saving, if you can, because it gets rid of NAT. Gets rid of NAT in the camera, because we've got a 5G modem in the camera, right? And that's doing its own NAT if it gets a v4 address. And then the carrier gateway is doing another set of NAT, and then the local router and local Wi-Fi are doing another set of NAT, and each of those is running queues. So it looks like getting rid of those queues and getting rid of that NAT processing saves you around 10 milliseconds, which is worth having. And then the same sort of saving is available if you get rid of turn candidates. If you don't do turn, if you can get a direct, genuinely peer-to-peer, address-to-address session, then it takes a leg out of the trip. Now, that doesn't always work. There are cases where routing via a turn server from someone like Cloudflare, for example, will actually be quicker, but it's typically only quicker if you change jurisdictions. Like, our users are typically less than 5 kilometers away from the source, and so they're always in the same country, right? So if we can get, and the turn servers almost never are, so like if we can stay in country, that's a win. So yeah, host candidates are a good win, often, but not always. This was one of the surprising ones, and some of them these things are relatively obvious, but this one I just hadn't seen coming at all, which is if you disable lip sync. Now, you can't see the driver, right? There's no lips to sync with in any of our videos, right? So we don't care about whether the audio is synchronized accurately with the video. And it turns out that doing that costs you 20 milliseconds. And it's essentially, as far as I can work out, is because there's no sensible common factor between the 20 millisecond audio frames and the 33 millisecond video frames. So to get them to line up, you have to go to multiples of 60, and that's that's not accurate. So it turns out that the whole thing delays by pretty much a whole audio frame in order to sync the video. So there's a 20 millisecond saving there if you lose lip sync, which I was quite pleased with. Cheap, well, it's not actually cheap, but easy win is to go out and buy a faster monitor, right? You just go out and buy a gamer's monitor and you've saved yourself 10 milliseconds. More expensive, go out and buy a faster internet connection. Get fiber to the premises and not fiber to the curb, and get rid of your DSL line, right? Those will win you certainly 10 milliseconds, probably more. I mean, somebody was telling me they have 2 millisecond ping to Google from their fiber at home, and that would save me another, that would be like 18 then. Weirdly, this was one that, again, surprised me. I thought it wouldn't make any difference. I thought moving from Wi-Fi to Ethernet on a non-busy Wi-Fi really wouldn't make any difference. But it turns out that's not true. There's more jitter on Wi-Fi. Even relatively empty Wi-Fi has more jitter on it than in Ethernet. So if you get rid of in the step between the fiber and your viewing station, you get rid of the Wi-Fi and you start doing that over fiber, you can trim the jitter buffer by another 5 milliseconds. It's not a huge saving, but it's worth having. And I point out that at this juncture, we're getting close to 200 milliseconds, which is nice. Now, this is another total shock, Right, actually didn't believe this when I did it, and I suspect that it won't last long, particularly not after this presentation. Somebody in the Chrome team will fix it. But last time I measured it, Safari is on H.264 is 20 milliseconds faster at rendering than Chrome. And it looks like the reason is really funny, which is that Chrome doesn't believe that you've finished getting the packets for a frame until it sees the marker bit on the subsequent RTP packet for the next frame, on the first RTP packet for the next frame. And then it says, oh, okay, I must have had the last frame, and starts rendering it. Whereas Safari is depacketizing each of the packets in that frame and interpreting at least at the null level. So it knows that the last packet is the last packet, and it kicks it off to the renderer there. Now, if you're completely filling the pipeline, that doesn't make any difference. But if you're, which we often are with 5G, if you've got excess uplink, then you may have like half a frame time between, or more, between when your last packet turns up and the first packet of the next one, or the next frame. So we can get up to 20 milliseconds saving by switching to Safari from Chrome. Now, like I say, I'm absolutely sure that won't last. But it will mean that Chrome is faster when they do it. And it also may not be true for VP8. Yeah, local ASIM, this is sort of one of those more obvious things, which is that not all SIMs, not all 5G connectivity in the camera is the same. Like, you're constrained somewhat by the economics and the availability, but if you can get a SIM from the local provider, like if I could go down and if I'd gone out and got an eSIM from Plus or whoever here and loaded it in there, as opposed to what I'm doing at the moment, which is roaming from a European provider, that would save me 15 milliseconds, because all of the roaming providers have to wrap up the local traffic into a VPN, send it back to their home country, and then send it back here. And that costs a varying amount, but of the order of 15 milliseconds. Now, again, it's not disastrous. Like, none of these things on their own are disastrously bad, but if you can trim each of them out, you can get closer and closer to the 200 millisecond target. So, yeah, surprisingly, 4G, good 4G, is better than bad 5G in the sense that it has less jitter. It's not necessarily to do with the actual bit rate, it's to do with the fact that if you get a delayed packet or two, Chrome, or a lost packet or two, Chrome will grow the Chrome, or libweb.RTC strictly, will grow the jitter buffer, and so you'll end up being delayed a bit. Whereas if you can get a solid 4G connection that's consistent, then you won't have that problem. So there's another 10 milliseconds there. This is the big win. Actually, this was the first big win that we had, which is essentially it's also about managing the jitter buffer at both ends, of using bandwidth estimation to be super aggressive about not letting queues arrive anywhere in the path. And when you do lose a packet, if it's an old packet, you don't RTX it. Because if you RTX it, then what happens is that, like, everything gets delayed until it turns up, and then you end up with a bigger jitter buffer. So we keep a much shorter cache than I'd expected for RTXs, and you never ever, or rather we never ever resend, never ever RTX anything that's older than the last full frame. Because there's no point. It'll never get physically rendered onto the screen, and it will grow the jitter buffer for you, whether you want it or not. So the big kind of takeaway message of that is we back off super fast the moment we see anything that looks like a queue forming, and then we ramp up slowly afterwards. This isn't available under many circumstances, but in a few tracks and in a few races it is, where there's a private 5G network. So you're not on public 5G, you're on private 5G. And it's the same protocol, so in theory you'd think it wouldn't make much difference, but there are two factors that mean that you can save 10 or more milliseconds. And one of them is that private 5G, the core, you can be running the core on a little rack next to you, And you can basically plug your Ethernet into where the core is breaking out your call. And so you have no transit time between the core and the screen. So that's a noticeable win. And then the other win is, this isn't exclusively for private 5G. There are APIs that in theory will allow in the future one to do this on public networks. But you can somewhat tune the network as how many uplink slots it gives you and when. And that can tune, it doesn't save a huge amount, but it can save a few milliseconds of getting an uplink slot sooner for each outbound packet, uplink packet. So, and if it's a private 5G, you can mess with it. I mean, the thing about this camera, right, is that it's an uplink device. Like in contrast to almost all normal 5G uses, which is essentially downlink, this is uplink. So if you can tweak the parameters such that it's more uplink friendly, there's a win there. So after all that, ta-da, we got 170 milliseconds, which is nice. But you can't ever get all of it. You can get close, but not all of it. So I have some caveats. Like I said, you can't get all of these all of the time. But you can get some of them some of the time, to sort of paraphrase. You can't always get what you want. But all of them depend on you being in control of more of the stack. Like the more of the stack you control, the more you control which eSIMs are in there, the more you control how much the buffering is, and all of that, the more you can trim, the more you can manage this stuff. And basically, the huge takeaway message is that small wins, all the yak shaving that I've ended up doing, they all add up to actually about half. Like we've gone from 350 to 170. So like it's a significant win in a series of quite small steps. So yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say, except I'm going to see whether I can actually show you the camera in action. Maybe. Let's see whether we connect. And the answer is no. Well, we are connected, actually. That's weird. There we go. Yeah. So, yes, this is me, and I'm waving at it, and it's pretty much in sync. I mean, I'm guessing that, because this is roaming, I'm guessing we're at 250 milliseconds, something like that. And then you can do stuff like just to show you, you can like change we can make me black and white. Or grey and grey, actually, or turn the contrast up and all of that stuff. And that's all over the data channel. Yeah, anyway, so let's see if I can get us out of full screen mode and get us back to the presentation. Yeah, so yeah, contact me, find me afterwards, obviously, on the boat or elsewhere. I'm Tim at Pipe, pi.pe. Steely Glint on Chaos Social on the Fediverse. Do consulting on open source, WebRTC, obviously Pipe, but other random things, as Dan will has proven, I'm up for stupid challenges sometimes, if they seem amusing. I'm also, on the stupid challenge front, a member of the WebRTC working group. Not all of the decisions are my fault. So anyway, so yeah, questions. I'm a little bit deaf, so shout.
Actually, I think that we have a question from chat. So let me... Yeah, we have a live stream at stream.rtc.on.live, and there is a chat over there. So, question from Mate. If minimal latency is the goal, what would even motivate the use of WebRTC over traditional 5G mobile radio, which offers 10 to 100 milliseconds?
So, I don't know what your... Like, I don't have the license to make phones. Like, it's like we need a radio signal. Okay, so we're using 5G, but if we want to use 5G, we have to use something that's licensed. And then on top of that, we've got to do something with the data. We've got to render it. It's got to be in some sort of format. And so we've chosen to use, I suppose the choice we ended up making was the fact that we wanted the renderer in the browser. So we wanted something that was browser compatible. Because what we don't want is the teams to have to lug around another device. Like, it's fine to sell them this to bolt into the car. They're okay with that. But what I don't want to do is like having to have a screen that they take round with them that has our custom software in it. What they actually do is fire up Chrome or Safari and they view the stream on that. So that's kind of, I think the answer, that's a very long answer which should be summarized as we want it to be web compatible.
Okay.
Yeah, so quick question about the codec you used for this test. Was it H.264, and did you use hardware encoding on the device to get the encoding as fast as possible?
Yes and yes. I've looked at other codecs. I've looked seriously at H.265, and the hardware appears to support it, but I can't get any browser to render the H.265 it generates. I've not put enough time in to find out why, so it's on my to-do list. But for the moment, we're on H.264 with a hardware encoder. And I mean, so the trick is the hardware encoder is fast enough that it will generate a frame, it will encode a frame before the next one's ready from the camera. So we can do that all in a loop.
Right, and then related to this, have you played with frame rate? We found that using much faster frame rates actually reduces the latency, which is...
Yeah, it also ups the bit rate. So the short answer is no. I mean, I've thought about it. I played with it very briefly, but the problem is that, like, we're on a bit rate budget as well. I mean, these things get through a couple of gigabytes an hour, which on roaming rates can get expensive. I mean, not race car expensive, but expensive. So we're kind of disinclined to push it too far up. But it's something we will test, and maybe for the autonomous vehicles, maybe the finances are different. So yeah, it's something we will try.
Very cool, thank you.
At least 2 more questions. One over there and, 3 more questions.
Can I ask?
If you have whoever has a mic can ask questions.
All right. So you came up with like 13 or so ways to shave off a few milliseconds. How did you come up with this list? And can you come up with more even? How are you going to do that?
Is there more to come out? Well, I mean, we've just heard one, and that is on my to-do list. And I think there are a few places. There's a flag in Chrome which ought to do something and doesn't. There's a play out delay hint something. And in theory, it should be the jitter buffer target depth. And I changed it, and the graph changed, but the timing didn't. And I'm like, I have no idea what happened there. So and that was only last week. So at some point, I'm going to go and bug somebody on the Chrome team and ask them to explain what I've done wrong. So I think because it was saying the jitter buffer was like 60 milliseconds, and I could turn it down in theory to turn it down to 30 and not care, or 40 maybe. So I don't know. Yeah, there are a few places still to try, but in the end, 200 is, if we can hit 200, that's probably enough.
Actually, it's a little bit related, because most of the savings I saw, it's related to jitter buffer, like the jitter, the bandwidth estimations, the RTX, not waiting, so forth. So can you just suggest to the Chromium team, because it's a pretty big market, for example, the autonomous vehicle, that let's give full control over how to set it up, so how to set up the playout buffer, because it turns out that it saves a lot, tremendously a lot.
Yes, that's something I was hoping. Well, so there's a trade-off, because as I said in answer to one of the earlier questions, we're really keen that people can just use a stock browser. So I don't want, like, in theory, I could go out and build a client app,
Yeah,
but I don't want to do that. So I will need to use the controls that Chrome or Safari, Chrome and Safari offer me.
Yeah, because I saw that at least I think 40, 60 milliseconds you saved because you just tuned the playout buffer. If you have the full control of the code, you can write your own playout buffer, but you want it to be compatible with the browser. So it seems that we need to have more control on the playout buffer in order to reduce the delay for pretty much. And, yeah.
Yes, and there are gaming companies who say exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
and so, which is one of the reasons why being a member of the W3C WebRTC working group is useful. But it doesn't, I don't make a browser, so I can't actually make things happen. I can just hint that it would be nice if they did. And then maybe they do and maybe they don't. But yes, your point's right.
Thanks.
Do you think the choice of language like Java affects the performance, or compared to something more performant like Rust or Go, Python in particular?
So it turns out that for WebRTC, there's almost no performance difference. Like, there's a startup cost in Java, which is Dan's joke about my 3-minute wait while it loaded. But that was from a 2015 SD card. So part of it was just memory read. But yeah, so it's not a performance issue, because in any sensible device, you're using a hardware encoder and you're using hardware encryption. Like, if you're not, then you've lost on a small device. The energy budget's too high. So it actually doesn't make a huge performance difference. And if I was doing it again, starting again now, I'd probably be just using it in Golang and using Panton. But I started this before Sean started Panton, and it's nice. The other thing is that it's like, it is a bit egotistical of me, but it's really nice to be able to be in complete control of the whole damn stack. Like, any change I want to make, it's my problem. I mean, okay, I can't break it for other customers, but if I want to add a feature that does something for this particular use case, not a problem. I don't have to negotiate with anyone. I can just go do it.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you were able to bring down the latency to 170 millisecond, but what is the baseline? So do you know that what is the actual like theoretical minimum, let's say ping round trip time, if you were able to do some direct routing?
I don't think that, I don't think that's necessarily dominant, right? I think we've got to the point, and if you're on the 5G private network on the same core, then I don't think the ping time's dominant. I think you're now at the point of how many frames do you have to hold in this buffer, how many frames does Chrome hold in the playout? And to some extent, is there a network buffer in the kernel that I haven't managed to tune out? So I think once I've got down past the obvious network steps, I think it's at the edges and not in the middle. Now, on this one, this is roaming, and there's probably 100 milliseconds of latency between here and there in the network. But for the rest of it, if it's a private network, that's not going to be the case. So, yeah, I don't know what the theoretical minimum is. I mean, I guess technically it's twice the frame interval. Like, it's probably 60 milliseconds, 66.
So, thanks, Tim. A couple of comments here. The delay chart that you had from ChatGPT about the HESP stuff, high efficiency streaming protocol. It doesn't really use Quick. I think that was another mistake on ChatGPT's part.
Yay! Okay.
So, I mean, it just uses HTTP. So there's a separate track or representation for low delay extension. So joining, another representation from the current representation becomes much faster. So that's, HESP and the low delay, low latency extensions for Dash support that. So I just wanted to say that. And secondly, JP, the FFmpeg guy, has shown that with Quake from one computer to the next over a local area network, he can transmit frames in about 16 milliseconds, which is one frame duration at 60 frames per second.
Okay.
So
the theoretical minimum is about 1 frame interval.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then at 60 frames per second is 16 milliseconds. But there is no, there's no packet loss, nothing. It's just a direct connection between two computers. And,
So I've got a factor of 10 to go.
Yeah, exactly. Tomorrow we are going to show that over the internet we can get to about a 3-frame latency, around 100 milliseconds with our current mock implementation. So yeah, there is no, I guess, bare minimum, but the frame interval would be the ideal number in that case. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful teaser, Ali, for tomorrow's talk. Any other questions? If not, oh, there is one more, the final one for this talk.
Okay, I have question or 2 questions. Have you tried different network adapters, the Ethernet adapters, like some gamer ones or maybe for server ones? It might be faster. And related question, have you tried running your application on different operating systems, as the kernel may have different optimization in this network stack?
I have tried. The short answer is not really. We're not really in control over the receiving end. So typically, the race engineers will turn up with a ruggedized Livono laptop, and I can't really do much with that. So I'm not, and it typically runs Windows. So I'm not in control of that end of it. This end, I could, in theory, change the hardware, but so for example, and this is one of the things that Dan will tell you as well, that hardware, changing it is expensive. So this has a set of fins on the back which go onto the 5G modem to cool it. Okay, so the whole of the back plate is a heatsink. Now, if I change the 5G modem, we have to redesign the case. So I'm disinclined to change the hardware adapter, to change the hardware at all. It's a big cost. So I'd have to be really convinced that it was worth it. What I have done, and what's really bizarre about this modem, is there are, I think, 4 different ways of getting IP connectivity out of it. The worst possible case, which is funny but useless, is you can actually run PPP over it. It will emulate a serial port, and you can run AT, whatever it was. It wasn't E, it was C or something. But it was an AT command which just fired up PPP. And you can do that. Oh, it's dial, that's right. You could dial it. It was dial plus something. You can do that, and it will fire up a PPP connection, and it'll run it over a serial port. But you're limited to, that's disastrously slow. And then the next one up is it will emulate a USB Ethernet device. But it turns out that's not as quick as you'd hope. And then the one that we're actually using is it's emulating a PCIe Ethernet. And that's actually pretty quick, because you're on the PCIe bus. So yes, we have played with different interfaces, but actually with the same hardware. But none of those saved more than a couple of milliseconds.
All right, let's wrap it up with the round of applause for team.